To start, how would you define what misinformation is?
There's a lot of studies out right now. The challenges that we have are two different matters around misinformation, because in this digital age, it's very hard to differentiate between blogs, opinions, facts. And so people might have erroneous information because they might take an opinion as a fact without checking sources. And then that brings a whole dimension of media literacy into question. So that's what I put the misinformation category. Disinformation is deliberate, intentional uh, interest groups or individuals who will put out outright lies that catch on fire in order for their own personal interest. And that is a different subject that has consequences to our democracy as well as other matters, even health related to disinformation about COVID, for example, and the vaccination. So I think I do want to distinguish the two. And going back to disinformation, one of the areas that the Reboot Foundation has studied is really the impact of social media on disinformation. And what our studies have shown is that regardless of age, income, or actual political partisanship, where you're leaning, heavier use of social media demonstrated that those individuals actually had more susceptibility to not being able to identify disinformation. And you may
Right.
then ask the question, why is that? And it's because of the algorithm of social media is such that it's deliberately intended to prey on our emotions so that our eyeballs can stay longer on the platforms. And hence, naturally, what you are shown is actually linked to polarized extreme views, because you'll never get shown an opposing view on your screen if you're going through Facebook in terms of ranking of what's popping up front. So those are some of the challenges that we're dealing with misinformation and disinformation.
How big of a factor is critical thinking? And for example, in something like the recent attack on the Capitol, where could people have applied more critical thinking skills to not get swept up in taking part in something like that?
A lot of the topics that you talked about is skill sets for media literacy, which obviously goes hand in hand with skills of critical thinking. I think critical thinking, by definition, is how to be a better thinker, which means thinking about your own thinking and realizing what your actual biases are, what may be some of your convictions based on your previous experiences or your emotion that flaws your actual thinking in terms of logic thinking, reasoning, questioning assumptions. And I think that's why specific critical thinking skills is important, especially to teach to our children today, because those are skills that help people to take a step back, take a breather, and actually question your assumptions so that you might catch yourself before coming into a rut of just believing what's been pounded to you, regardless of whether or not they're lies.
How do you feel, and what roles do you feel the government, social media platforms, and news media outlets should be taking to provide accurate and clear information? Should there be more of an effort to distinguish things like opinion versus fact, or highlighting the fact that maybe the statistics being referenced, are widely accepted, are not widely accepted? Where do you think that the balance for that is?
I do think that governments have a role in terms of trying to instill more literacy, media literacy, and critical thinking in the curriculum in K through 12. People talk about the challenges of critical thinking and media literacy for adults, but the fact of the matter is, with TikTok, who actually targets even younger children, it's another demonstration that we really need to start early so that it becomes a habit with regard to media literacy. And social media companies, obviously, um, we need to really think about what they can do to be much more transparent about their actual own algorithm, as well as, I think one of the challenges that Twitter faced before they took Trump off their site was what they were censoring. Even the Trump supporters, nobody could really understand what they were censoring versus not, because there wasn't as much transparency around it. So I think everybody has a role to play. As individuals, it's more of our own liberty if we can actually think better, and if we have the capability to change opinions because we're thinking rationally. And I think we need to just remind ourselves that in this economy and period where it's so much data thrown in our face that it's hard to actually navigate through all of that. So we really all need to take a bit of a step back, maybe do some digital detox, and allow ourselves to breathe and think better.